Well, it's 9 o'clock. It looks like we have a quorum. I'll call the meeting to order. Welcome, everyone who's attending. The first order of business will be the roll call.
Chair, good morning, commissioners. Commissioner Jim Anderson.
Present.
Commissioner Roger Anderson.
Here.
Commissioner Justin Cummings. Vice Chair Manu Koenig. Commissioner Rochelle Lather.
Present.
Commissioner Eduardo Montesino.
Here.
Commissioner Alan Timms.
Here.
Alternate Commissioner Ed Banks.
Here.
Alternate Commissioner Zach Friend is absent. Chair John Hunt.
Here.
And alternate Commissioner Fred Keeley is absent. Chair, we do have a quorum.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the executive officer's message. Mr. Strano.
Thank you, Chair. Just a brief reminder to the commission and members of the audience. We are operating this meeting under a hybrid approach, and that's under the current law AB 2449, which allows the commission to join us in person. Unless you're sick, then you can join us virtually. For staff and legal counsel, we have the option to join virtually or in person. Our legal counsel, Josh Nelson, is joining us virtually. And for members of the public, they also have the option to join us virtually or in person. For anyone that's interested in addressing the commission on any of the agenda items this morning, they'll have up to 3 minutes to speak. For those joining us in person, if you can join us here at the podium and state your name, and we will let you know when you have 1 minute left and when your time is up. For members joining us on Zoom, if you press *9, that will raise your hand. We will unmute your microphone when it's time for you to speak. And then again, we'll let you know when you have 1 minute left and when your time is up, and then we'll mute your microphone after that. Chair, that concludes my summary of the meeting, the hybrid meeting process.
Thank you. The next item is adoption of the minutes. Do any of the commissioners have any questions or edits to the minutes of the last meeting? Okay, a motion from
I'll second.
Roger Anderson, second Jim Anderson. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? One abstention. Motion passes. Okay. We have an opportunity for any requests to address the commission on agenda items that are not on the agenda. I'll ask if anyone in the here present has any comments for the commission on items not on the agenda. And if so, Executive Officer Serrano, are there any online?
There's none in the audience, and there is none being on Zoom requesting. Oh, yes.
Public comments for items on the agenda.
No, so when we get to the agenda item for the public member seat, we'll have this discussion. So Chair, there's no request at this time.
Thank you. Okay, item 5, under the public hearings, we have the Old Coach Road John Hall Extraterritorial Service Agreement, and I'll ask for a presentation from staff.
Thank you, Chair. We received a request from a single landowner to receive sewer service from the city of Scotts Valley. The parcel in question is approximately 1 acre in size, as a single family home, and it's experiencing a failing septic system. What's interesting is their neighborhood, there's already 5 existing ESAs. So meaning the city's already providing sewer services to other properties within the community. They have a main line on Old Coach Road already in place. A full analysis is attached to your agenda packet, but here are the key findings. As I mentioned, this was initiated by the landowner. So we have 100% landowner consent for their single parcel. It is supported by the city of Scotts Valley. In fact, they adopted a resolution rather than just having a will serve letter. They adopted a resolution indicating that they support and are willing to provide services to this property. This ESA also is consistent with the sphere of influence for the city, meaning that LAFCO has identified the city as the most logical provider of public services. And finally, Based on staff's analysis, this request meets the requirements under the commission's policies, under LAFCO law, and it also reinforces the state's encouragement of transitioning septic systems, especially when they fail, to a more sustainable sewer system. That being said, staff is recommending that the commission adopt the draft resolution that's in your staff report, approving the ESA involving this single parcel and the city of Scotts Valley. Chair, that concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there any comments or questions from the public on this item?
Chair, there's none in the audience and there are none on Zoom as well.
Thank you. Any comments from commissioners? We have a Alan?
Just one comment. Obviously, I was one of the 5 votes that approved a resolution for the city of Scotts Valley. And so I'm absolutely recommending that we support this. And if there's no other comments, I would move approval.
Second.
Second, okay. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Next item is on the Policies and Procedures Handbook, proposed amendments, and I will request the staff presentation.
Thank you, Chair. Last year, the commission took our existing 20 or 21 policies and combined them into one single handbook. This allows the commission to review our policies and procedures on a regular basis rather than having separate discussions. It's all in one document. Since our last consideration of the handbook, there has been some proposed amendments that need to be considered by the commission. The first one is an amendment to the employment policy. Specifically, this was a request from the commission to develop a salary schedule when considering potential salary increases for staff. So we provided that in our policy. We worked closely with our legal counsel to develop the language that you see in the track changes. The actual salary points that are shown in the table are based on surveys that we received from other LAFCOs for the executive officer position and the analyst position, et cetera. In addition to that, we also are proposing language for remote work. This is something that's been ongoing for the last couple of years. It's kind of the new normal. Other LAFCOs have adopted remote work policies. Your staff recently did a workshop at Marin LAFCO, and they were working on a remote work policy. So that's something that we wanted to also provide specifically provide guidelines for the commission and staff. You won't see staff on a laptop at the beach, but actually we'll have guidelines on how to work remotely. We'll have a kind of a replica of our office at our homes if and when we do work remotely. So that's something that's being proposed to the commission. The other change is to the independent special districts policy. Since our last review, there has been some changes, specifically the dissolution of Branson 40, of Opal Cliffs Recreation District, and the formation of a new healthcare district. We want to reflect those changes in our policy. Next is the city selection committee policy. As you recall, the 4 cities adopted a new rotation protocol. And so what LAFCO has done is we've reflected that change in a policy, and we developed a table that shows the rotations of each city when they're a regular, when they're alternate, and when they're off LAFCO between now and the year 2040. So there's no discretion or uncertainty of when a city is on LAFCO. 2 more. The policies, fees, and deposits policy now includes language when we receive a financial assistance request. Specifically, we added a cap of not to exceed $15,000 for any fiscal year. And this is for any request, whether it's a annexation fee waiver reduction or waiver, or when an agency is requesting assistance when there's a special study. For example, the one that we received for the city of Capitola. This allows us to have a cap. So we know exactly how much we may use if the commission chooses to, but the language in the policy states that it's under the discretion of the commission if and when a fee assistance request is implemented. And finally, your staff, specifically your analysts, look thoroughly through the whole handbook, looking for any typos or any formatting issues, and we made some non-substantial changes throughout the handbook. One that I do want to point out is back in 2020, when we looked at the commission policy, specifically about commissioners being part of the closed session, the commission considered and approved allowing alternates to be on the discussions regarding closed sessions, because that's just a common practice that we've done. However, back in 2020, it wasn't reflected in the policy. That was a oversight by your staff. So we just want to reflect that change. So that's being presented in the handbook, allowing regular and alternates to be part of closed session discussions, which is consistent with other LAFCOs and their practices of allowing the full commission to have those discussions. Chair, that concludes my presentation. I am requesting that the commission adopt the draft resolution approving these proposed edits, but I'm happy to answer any questions once you open and close public comments.
Thank you, Mr. Serrano. Full open public comment. Are there any comments on this item? Are there any online?
No, sir.
Okay, hearing none. Any commission discussion, Alan?
Thank you, Chair. Just a question, Mr. Serrano, on the remote work requirements, by the way, are very thorough. So thank you for that. It's much more thorough than any others I've seen in the private sector for sure. My question just relates to the IT aspect in terms of employees using their own equipment. Has that been reviewed in terms of, you know, the risk it might or might not pose to government systems? That's the only question.
Great question. And so that's something that we coordinated with the county for that specific. What about security if we do use our own personal laptops? And the county does require us to download a software that protects the county systems and our systems, LAFCO systems. And so that's part of the process. If and when we do work remotely, that software is downloaded in our laptops or home desktops in order for us to even have access to the files here in our office.
Perfect. Thank you.
Kristen?
Thank you, Chair. I'm wondering if you could speak maybe a little bit to the compensation schedule and how those rates were identified, because, you know, just thinking about the cost of living in Santa Cruz, it seems like some of these rates are at such a low point that I just wonder if it, you know, the challenges will be faced with even trying to recruit somebody given the kind of salary ranges. So I'm wondering if you kind of speak to how we landed on those rates.
Great question, Commissioner Cummings. So what we did, the actual language itself was provided by our legal counsel, but the salary steps that you see in the policy, that's something that's based on your staff's surveying other LAFCOs and taking the ranges, because it does vary depending on the LAFCOs of how much they pay their, for example, their clerk. So we took the high and low of both of them to develop something that staff felt comfortable presenting to the commission. Now, staff is more than happy to modify those numbers now or in the future. This is just a starting point, especially if we are considering hiring additional staff. I think at that point we should definitely look at our policy and see if any adjustments need to be made. But at this time, staff isn't anticipating the need for hiring, but that's something that we can definitely discuss if we do consider additional staffing.
I think.
Yep.
There we go. Yeah, I think at this time, I mean, obviously, you know, you're fully staffed right now, but moving forward, you know, if there's a point when there's going to be new hires, it'd be worth seeing, you know, how that might be complicated with what we're seeing here in terms of rates, just because of the fact that, you know, oftentimes one of the biggest deterrents to people wanting to work here in the county is they look at what they're being offered and then they look at the cost of living, and then oftentimes they're like, yeah, no, I'm not going to do that because I can't afford to, you know, aside from renting a room in a house with a bunch of other people, you know, you can't really afford to live here. So happy to move forward with it as is, but especially given the fact that we could change in the future, but just want to keep that in mind.
Definitely.
Okay.
I agree.
Any other comments? Roger?
Just a couple of things. The first thing is where do you anticipate putting the salary schedule and other things like our fee schedule and so on? I think it's a little cumbersome to have it in the text of the policy document, but maybe something that is referred to that sits as a true appendix at the end of the document, just to make it a little easier to find some of these things. The other question is, I agree with Alan about the thoroughness of the basically remote work thing, but I think there are a few things that we should definitely put in there. I mean, the question of the age of hardware which is used, I think any computers that are used should be capable of using the most current updates to operating systems.
Okay.
That is, you know, whether it's Windows or Mac or Linux or whatever you're working with.
Okay.
The other thing too is that I think that I worry a lot about the question of whether there be problems with access, unauthorized access. And there should be some reference in here to the type of software you alluded to, as well as the question of VPN.
Okay.
And so there should be in multi-factor verification. So these things I think should be looked at. I have no trouble at all with approving this document today, but I would like to get some of these things tightened up and brought back to us at a soon date.
I think that's very reasonable, and a lot of that information that you are proposing or gathering is something that staff does have and we can implement. So as part of the motion, you could direct us to add that information.
Yeah, and I will also submit my comments to you.
Perfect.
Jim,
Well, I'm just going to say that, you know, in my past life, you couldn't use your own personal equipment on the system. You had to use your company laptop and stuff. So if you were to take that tact at it, you have the latest and current. It always worked best for me because it had all the programs and everything in my files. So something to think about.
any other comments or questions for staff? Do we have, oh, sure.
You were talking about the programs. I don't think it would be a good idea to say what they are in there because it's going to have to change like every 6 months. So yeah, maybe there's some reference to how you have to be up to date with the latest requirements of the county for access. Because you're going to be changing your policy every 6 months if you do that.
Yeah, I agree. I think if we just mention something to the effect of, or something to the extent of being consistent with the county's latest softwares or
Yeah.
something to that extent.
And I think they probably already have the two system, you know, I know I have that with my little district that I was working for. Also, I agree with Roger about the fee schedule, or I guess the pay schedule, that it would be better to be as an appendix because with cost of living increases, we're going to be moving it every year. And it would be a lot easier to do it in the procedures if you have it as an appendix.
That can be easily done, yes.
Any other comments or questions?
Commissioner,
Commissioner Banks?
with respect to the special district section of the policy, I noticed under class 1 fire protection districts, there are some that probably should be altered or removed. Aptos La Selva, Branciforte, because of consolidations.
I think in the track changes version,
Yeah.
it should be marked off. If they're still there, then we'll definitely remove them because that was the intent.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else? Hey, do we have a motion on the recommended action?
I'll move recommended actions.
It's Commissioner Anderson,
I'll second.
Commissioner Roger Anderson, second. All in favor?
Chair, just, does that include the recommended changes from Roger and
Yes.
Commissioner Rochelle?
Jim, you want to rephrase that motion?
Move approval with the recommended changes.
Thank you.
Well, second, Roger Anderson. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And abstentions. It passes unanimously. Thank you. All right, the next item is the Big Basin Water Company governance options. Mr. Serrano, do you have a staff presentation?
A brief one, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. There are over 100 or so small water systems scattered throughout the county, but there's one that's been in the news for a while now, and that's Big Basin Water. And as a result of their ongoing issues and challenges, the court identified a receiver to take control of operations. That is for the water and wastewater side of Big Basin Water. The receiver has done a lot of improvements during their last 4 months. We do have representation from the court receiver, Nicholas Jaber. He's in the audience. But that is a temporary solution. And during his 4 months, not only has he been managing the operations, but he's been coordinating with local leaders on identifying a more sustainable successor for those services. He's been working with the State Water Board, with county staff, with Supervisor McPherson's office, with LAFCO. It's literally all hands on deck. And the intent here is to see what can LAFCO do to help. We want to be part of the solution. And one thing that we wanted to do is develop a governance options report. Now, this report is intended to tell a story, specifically provide an overview of the Big Basin Water's history and services. It's almost 100 years old. Summarize the ongoing issues. How did we get here? Why did the court have to step in and identify a receiver? And also list possible solutions or governance options. We identified 8 in this report. Now, unfortunately, this report isn't a magic key that opens the door to solving the problems for Big Basin Water or identify this is the solution for them. But what it does do, it lays the foundations for us to have further discussions and further analysis. So LAFCO, in addition to developing this report and coordinating with the receiver, we're not experts in the water business or small water systems, but we wanted to find someone who was. And with the help of our water consultant, Perrette Harmon, we were able to find Moonshot Missions. It's a nonprofit organization that contracts with EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency. And their goal is to go to these small water systems and do like a forensic analysis of the organization and identify ways to areas of improvement and identify possible solutions for that system. So we thought that it would be great to partner with them in order to help us identify a solution. So we have this report. We have a partnership with Moonshot Missions. I provided this commission a letter of acknowledgement from Moonshot Missions indicating that they are willing and capable of providing services. We have a representative from Moonshot Missions in the audience as well. And I think with this partnership, we're one step closer in finding a solution for the residents. I think that's the overarching goal here. We have Supervisor McPherson and his staff here just to prove that we're really trying to work together to help the residents, because they're the ones that are struggling. There's the ones that have to boil their water. They're on the verge of not being able to get services for wastewater. So this is something that is of urgency. And I think LAFCO is able to at least tell the story and use this as a stepping stone for further analysis and discussion. So Chair, what staff is recommending is we receive and file this report, and that you direct staff to partner with Moonshot Missions and continue working with our water consultant, with the court receiver, and with county, specifically Supervisor McPherson staff, to be part of the solution. So Chair, that concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions once you open and close public comments, but I do want to recognize, and Matt Machado from the County Public Works is also here. One thing that I did not mention is that, and I alluded to it, Big Basin Water provides wastewater to 27 parcels. And the receiver was able to broker a deal with the county under CSA 7 to assume sewer responsibilities for those 27 parcel owners. Now, they've already developed a transition plan, which was shared with the commission this morning, and I believe you have copies of them in front of you. That plan identifies when they can start providing services, how much it'll cost. They have a draft budget, projections, proposed assessment for the 27 parcel owners. So we already have a transition plan ready to go. but it doesn't mean anything if those residents don't approve it. So the county has developed a tight schedule of presenting that transition plan for approval by the resident, and we're hoping that they do approve it by April, so they can start working by, I believe, in June or the 1st of July. But again, it's been an ongoing collaborative effort, and I believe that this report helps LAFCO continue being part of the solution. And that at that point, I'll conclude my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Serrano. I'd like to open this to public comment. Is there anyone present?
Yeah, hello, good morning. I'm Supervisor Bruce McPherson, representing the 5th District, which includes Big Basin. I am here just to say thank you to the LAFC for what it's done and the cooperative effort. I've never gone through a receivership issue like this. It's very complicated, it's very pointed, and it is a crisis situation. There's no question about it. So we have been working very well with the receiver, who has been fantastic, and I think you'll be hearing from him. But I just want to say thank you to the LAFCO staff. It has really been beneficial to us, and J.M. Brown from my staff in particular. But we have spent a lot of time. Yeah, it's only, we're talking about 27 parcels here, but it's either they have service or they don't have. They can't, their property is going to be really red listed, I guess, so redlined. So it's really critical. The time is very important. We want to get this done before July 1st. And I think we're well on our way to doing that, but it's taken a very good cooperative effort with LAFCO, the receiver, and well, the input of our staff too, to keep on this. So I appreciate your addressing this, and just to reemphasize how critical it is that we address this and come to a recommended action as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor McPherson.
Supervisor.
Other comments?
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Becky Steinbruner. I've been watching the development of the Big Basin Water Company with great interest. I am a customer of a small water system that thankfully right now is being very well managed and maintained. It has not always been the case. And so having met with Mr. Serrano and Commissioner Anderson and Commissioner Hunt, we talked about why did it get this bad? How did it get this bad? And I can tell you, as a customer of a small water system that was in big trouble, that it was the residents crying out for help repeatedly, and we got no response from county environmental health. And what it took was for it to get so bad financially that the residents made a complaint to the CPUC. That is the case for our privately owned water system, which I think is also the case for the Big Basin. So I think it will be a very interesting endeavor to go to bring on Moonshot to analyze this one and extend that expertise to other small water companies. Now, I do not recommend wholesale consolidation of small water companies. Making it bigger does not make it better or more affordable. As we have seen in Soquel Creek Water District, they have very high rates. So I want to just ask that you look at this as a test case and talk, for those of you who are elected officials, talk with your constituents who are in small water systems and find out what they would like as sounding boards for their complaints, for their worries, for the problems, and understand that there is little trust in the government among small water company owners and operators, because they do not want any more regulation than they're already burdened by. The costs and the resources are growing, and it makes it harder and harder to operate. So thank you for this good work. Thank you. I'm going to be watching the Moonshot consultants and see how that goes. And thank you for your time considering all of this. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments?
Good morning. My name is Nicholas Jaber. I am an attorney with Servian by Right, the court receiver. I am overseeing the Big Basin Water Project. It's a pleasure to be here with you. I will be brief. I've worked closely with Mr. Serrano, of course, Supervisor McPherson's office, Dave Reed, many folks at the county. We're obviously working closely with the state boards. I'll just offer a few quick comments. First of all, thank you very much for the work on the list of options here. The transition that we're discussing from the current ownership to something permanent is one that is ordered directly by the court. The receiver acts as an agent of the court, and so the reason I mention this is just to inform the fact that, number one, a transition has to happen in order for the receivership to go away. And secondly, just to make a brief distinction, on the wastewater side, which you heard a little bit about, we have a separate appointment order. So there are actually two receivership appointment orders in operation here. The systems obviously are of different scales and of different needs. The customers on the wastewater side are all drinking water customers, but obviously it's not the other way around. So we are quite thrilled with the plan that we announced on Monday night on the wastewater side. The drinking water side is far more complicated. And this document that you all have drafted is going to be key in guiding those transition efforts on the drinking water side. Finally, I'd just like to note that the drinking water system is still in grave distress. Funding is a serious problem. The receiver was appointed without a funding commitment. The corporation is insolvent. So I'd just like to press upon the public and just inform the commission of that fact. The drinking water system is still at a serious risk of failure. And so we are working tirelessly to identify funding. Some of those funding options do have something to do with which transition option ultimately is finalized, and we would like the local public water systems to engage with us as we finalize a transition plan. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Other comments?
Chair and members of the commission, my name is Lydia Rossiter. I'm a senior utility advisor with Moonshot Missions, and I just wanted to take this opportunity to introduce myself and a little bit about Moonshot. We provided you with a letter that explains a little bit more about our company, but essentially we're a nonprofit consulting firm that provides assistance to utilities just like this, assistance for utilities that are having problems with technical issues, managerial issues, and financial issues. And we're very pleased to be partnering on this particular community because we think we have an ability to help. And I will say, as someone who lives locally, I'm thrilled to be able to help my neighbors. So with that, we look forward to this partnership going forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair, and I will note, Moonshot Mission is willing to provide their expertise at no cost. That's just like cherry on top. It's great.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public? Anything online?
We have one hand raised, and we also received an email, and I'll read this after we're done with the Zoom comments. So Ms. Julie Jennings, you've been asked to be unmuted.
Yes. Lower my hand. I am a customer of Big Basin Water. I have been supportive of this process from the start. We have recognized that we are in dire situation as it stands, as the receiver has stated. A number of the customers have been very strong in the support of the receiver, and having someone at the helm who will help move this forward. It's very important to the customers to know that we will have water. We don't want to be Mexico City. And I was listening to that, and that's something that is very sad. And I hope that never happens to our area and to ourselves. So I applaud all of Joe's efforts, all of LAFCO's efforts. Look forward to working with Moonshot Missions, what the solutions are. We want to know that we will have water. We don't have to dig our own wells or put water tanks in or walk away from our properties. So thank you so much for your attention, for your help, for JM's help with Supervisor McPherson. It's wonderful to know that the government does have our back, and we do support it.
Thank you.
We have one more hand raised, Chair. So we're asking them to unmute themselves.
Good morning. This is Ann Thrift. I'm a Big Basin Water customer. I've been part of some customer effort for the last 3.5 years to get to the point where we are with the receiver. Many customers are still completely uninformed about what's going on. Some of us are a small customer volunteer group that are trying to inform both customers and the media and state agencies, and we've been working on this for about a year now. I just wanted to say that in what we've seen, that consolidation with a public entity is the top priority for many of us, because that will help with funding. This is not a rich area. There are some people, who have high incomes, and there are some like myself who do not and are on fixed incomes. So the whole concept of being able to get public funding, I think, is a pretty high priority, and consolidation of some sort with a public entity is a way to do that. Anyway, that's all I wanted to say. And thank you guys, LAFCO, for working on this. And thank you all of our government officials for working on this.
Thank you.
Chair, we just have one more email comment that I'll read on behalf of Patrick Labruzzo. It says, Dear LAFCO Chair, Board, and Executive Officer, I am a water customer and property owner in the Big Basin Water Company water service area, and I'm providing a public comment in support of the recommended actions for agenda item 6A. I thank Executive Officer Mr. Serrano for preparing the governance options report. I read the report and I found it both helpful and informative. Please approve the draft report and direct Mr. Joe Serrano to work with Moonshot Missions to further explore all possible governance options and further refinement of the steps, procedures, and potential financing available. I applaud the efforts and good work produced in this draft report, and more detailed and procedural information will be of great help to myself and the rest of the Big Basin Water customers. It is apparent from the draft report that significant public support is necessary for most of the governance options listed in the draft report. I encourage Mr. Serrano and the board to continue communication and transparency with members of the affected public. Thank you again to the board and all the efforts in assisting our situation. Sincerely, Patrick Labruzzo. And Chair, that concludes requests to address the commission on this item.
Thank you. And I'd like to reflect those public comments and thank staff for a very helpful report on this situation. I'll open it up to comments, questions from commissioners. Start with.
Yeah, first of all, this report surprised me. It's really an excellent one. I had no idea that you were working on it, and I'm very impressed. The other question I have, though, is of the 8 options, how is the process going to actually hone those down? And I was particularly struck by I'm sorry I missed your name, the attorney from Wright, but you made one comment, if we can reach a transition plan, and that was kind of ominous to me, and I assume that it's more complicated maybe than we might think. But I am curious about, in terms of looking at the feasibility, which of these options really are likely to provide public or other funding mechanisms that are attractive. And how long do you think it'll take us to solve these problems?
Yeah, great questions. And that's the reason why we wanted to partner with an expert like Moonshot Missions and work with the receiver, because their analysis will make it hopefully narrow down these options. But at the end of the day, it does come down to the community's interests in the options. The LAFCO, some of these options require LAFCO action, but we can't force any of these options on them. The community needs to be in support. The affected agencies need to be in support. What is the feasibility and the level of success for of these options? I think time will tell, and I think the assistance from Moonshot Missions will help us narrow that down and determine which of these options are actually more likely to be successful and which are a pie in the sky idea. But I think we need further analysis to answer those questions.
Let me go to Alan and then Rochelle.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I also congratulate staff and thank you to Supervisor McPherson's office, and the receivers seem great too. I hate to be the pedant, but I found a small error on page 8 of the report where it says total expenses for 2022 were approximately $126,000, which decreased from the previous year by 20%, $626,000. I think you probably mean it decreased by $126,000 from the like $500,000 ish. So just to correct that.
Appreciate that.
But no other questions. Thank you.
Commissioner Lather?
Hi, I'm the sewer and water nerd, so number one, because I pretty much took care of Davenport and got them sewer and water before I moved on to better pastures. I am thinking that the fees are going to be so high, and one of the items that should be considered is to get an income survey completed. I know you probably already know your jobs out there, but I just didn't see that in here. So I know that RCAC did that with me for Davenport, and I'm pretty sure the county could get that because the combination is really going to be high. And if the income's below the median household income, you have a better chance of getting some kind of funding. That's number one.
Okay.
Because I'm a smarty pants, I want to make sure everybody knows that. And then I have to say that I love George Hawkins, and I think he's great. He's done so much for financial capacity and management of DC Water, and now he's on to something more fun, I think. And I highly recommend. I'm so happy that Brett was able to get you in touch with him, because I didn't know what he was doing. I hadn't been paying attention to my LinkedIn. Yeah, I think it's a great opportunity, and I'm very happy about that.
Okay.
Any other comments or questions from commissioners? Commissioner Cummings?
Yeah, just briefly, I know how important of an issue this is, just based on conversations that we've been having on the board. And so I just want to thank LAFCO for their willingness to step up and to help be a part of this conversation, because the more we can collectively work towards resolving this as quickly as possible, I think is really critical. And so just want to thank staff. I do have one question. It sounds like the timeline is we want to have something done before like June, July. So just wondering if that's correct, and kind of what the next steps are with community engagement to kind of get to a resolution on what the final governance structure is, and is that going to come back to LAFCO for approval as well?
Good questions. And just for clarification, and Supervisor McPherson noted this, so, and the receiver did, there's two components here. We have the water side and the sewer side. And it's my understanding that the receiver and the county have reached an agreement that CSA 7 will provide sewer service to those 27 parcels. Now, time is of the essence, and it's my understanding, and the receiver can correct me if I'm wrong, the receiver can probably continue providing services to those 27 parcels for sewer service until July. So it's imperative that the county begin working before that. But in order for them to begin with this transition plan, the community needs to support the plan. Specifically, they need to support the proposed assessment, the funding source for the county to provide services. And that's why it's my understanding the county's going to consider this plan and the assessment election at their next meeting on the 12th. So I believe next week. If that gets approved, then the residents will get a ballot. Some of them are going to ballot, some are going to get postcards, but in essence, they're going to vote on whether or not they want to support this assessment. And hopefully that gets approved. And then that way the county can begin providing services in July. So that's the critical one that's happening right away. The water component still needs a lot of work. We need to determine who is the successor agency, how is that going to work, how is it going to be funding. So that timeline is still unknown. But for the sewer side, we have a tight schedule and we're hoping that that's successful in the next coming months.
Mr. Serrano, we might have some information from the receiver.
And I'll defer to you, Chair, if you want to give them extended time to speak.
If you're addressing this item, please, sir. Okay. Please take the podium, and Commissioner Lather might have some additional questions for you or for staff.
Okay, so I'm looking at this report that I haven't seen before, the Fallen Leaf Neighborhood. And I take it you have to go through the whole Prop 218 process to get to that. And I see Matt standing up. And I'm wondering if that's what you're doing to get it approved.
Yes. Good morning, everybody. Matt Machado, Director of CDI. And to answer your question, we are going through Prop 218, but it's a bit of a mixed bag. And so about half of the residents up there, a little less than half, have service today. And so those folks will be treating them as a utility charge, so a protest vote. And then the remainder of the parcels are vacant. And so what we're proposing for them is a standby charge, which will go through a Prop 218 ballot procedure. And so a little different mechanism for each. We're most concerned about the ballot procedure because the only votes that get counted are those that get returned. These are vacant parcels, and so we're a little unclear on how invested the owners are. So we're doing a lot of outreach from ourselves and from other community members to engage with those owners so that they return their ballot, hopefully with a yes. And with success of both of those processes, then we would be creating what we call a Zone 2 of CSA 7, and we would take over service as of July 1. And so that's our plan.
And you're going to use the existing treatment plant and the pump station?
We are. And
to the,
Yeah.
unfortunately, I know too much, right? I can visualize the entire system because I worked on it for 12 years or 16 years, something like that.
It actually went operational late last year, and it's been operating well. It does need some safety improvements. It does need some redundancy improvements. It needs some resilience improvements. And a part of our budget is to do that over the next 2 to 3 years and to continue to maintain it, hopefully for many years to come.
And that's included in the proposed rates?
It is.
Awesome.
It is.
I'm sorry, I didn't have time to study it.
No worries.
Okay, yeah, it looked odd to me, so I thought I could get some clarification.
Right. Thank you.
Thanks.
And if I may just respond briefly, the drinking water system is, as I mentioned earlier, a more complicated situation. If only we were so lucky as to have a path so clear as we do on the wastewater side. But the reality is that the court, and this is the point I really want to drive home, the court has asserted jurisdiction over the system. Okay. And what that means is that the court is ultimately in charge. We act as an agent. So what we will do is generate a recommendation in consulting with all of the agencies, regulatory boards, county, and customers, of course. And we will generate a recommendation, and ultimately the court will decide what happens. and I think what Mr. Anderson was referring to earlier, the ominous portion of this is it's quite simple. We have to be able to cover operations costs until the drinking water system can transition. That is the concern. Ultimately, that is the concern immediately, that we will not be able to make it far enough along to complete the transition on the drinking water side. And I am happy to take any questions, but I also do not want to overstay my welcome. So thank you.
Thank you. So we have a recommendation from staff to accept the report and to direct staff to continue working with Moonshot and the others involved.
I move.
I'm sorry, excuse me. We have a question from Commissioner Lather.
I'm a little confused about LAFCO's place in this. I assume we have to allow the annexation of these properties to CSA 7. Or are they already in it?
So what's interesting about those 27 parcels, they're already in CSA 7. So there's no LAFCO action required.
That's great.
That being said, there is a parcel outside CSA 7 that is, there's a fire station. And the county CSA 7 is already providing services or is going to provide services. So that does require annexation. As a precursor to that, we may receive an ESA request from the county soon. Then that will allow them to provide services to that fire station, get the required funding from the fire station. And then in the future, we will have an annexation. So LAFCO does play a role for the sewer side, and we may play a role in the water side if a public agency were to annex the Big Basin area. And now if there's other options listed in the report that does not require LAFCO action. And I think that was staff's intent to kind of lay everything on the table in order for the community and the local leaders to kind of figure out what options are out there right now.
So we're just accepting the report.
Correct. At this time, correct.
Any other questions or comments from commissioners?
I'll move recommended actions.
I'll second.
Commissioner Anderson and seconded by Commissioner Cummings. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes unanimously.
I just want to thank Matt Machado, Miss Lydia, Mr. Nicholas Jaber, McPherson, Supervisor McPherson, and J.M. Brown for all their help on this. This is definitely a team effort right now.
Thank you.
And you may go.
Thank you all for your comments and your help with this. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the public member selection process. And before we begin, I would like to ask legal counsel to explain the process to considering and selecting new public members when both incumbents are also running. Mr. Nelson.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Thanks, Chair, and good morning, everyone. The public members, both the regular and alternate member, are selected by the rest of the commissioners. In this case, would ask the chair and alternate public member to step down from the dais, just in an abundance of caution and for the any sort of appearances at that point. Would request that the vice chair run the meeting, and the commission would have the opportunity to ask questions of any of the applicants, deliberate, and then make a decision. Happy to answer any questions on process.
Are there any questions for Mr. Nelson? Okay, I'd like to turn the chair over to Commissioner Koenig, and I'll go in the comfortable chairs. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Hunt. Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Are there any other details about the process that we need to know from council?
I don't believe so.
Okay. Are there questions or comments from commissioners? All right. Well, seeing none, then I'll open it for public comment, and this would be a great opportunity for any members who have or any folks who have applied for these seats to address the commission.
Good morning. My name is Adam Hensley, and I live in Felton, and I'm one of the public member applicants. One of my favorite high school business teachers always liked to say, if you always do what you always done, you always get what you always got. Between two incumbents and the next newest applicant at 30 years in county, my opening statement couldn't be truer as I've only been here for 5 years. While I wasn't one of the two who didn't write an Iliad in my statement of qualifications, I would like to share a little bit more about me. My grandmother was the first female county commissioner, otherwise known as supervisors here, back home in Montana. My mom is a 3-term Democratic mayor deep in Republican country, and my dad worked for the concessionaires in Yellowstone Park. If you'd like for me to show you what a federal $1 million toilet looks like, I can send you a photo. I can say public service is in my DNA. Growing up in Bozeman, Montana, or Los Angeles, it makes me sad to see how many farmers and ranchers made more money selling their land to developers than they could ever working their land. I don't recognize my hometown anymore, and when I go back to visit my parents. I've also lived in the Inland Empire in SoCal, San Jose, and Phoenix, all of which are urban sprawls on steroids. They weren't for me, and this is why I'm standing here before you today. Having said that, I understand there also needs to be a balance between limiting urban sprawl and complying with the state mandated housing goals. As I mentioned in my statement of qualifications, my day job is selling credit card processing to government agencies all over the country, big and small. I have a decade of experience working with a variety of public officials. While I might not have the depth of the impressive accomplishments of the other applicants, I would like to say I view part of being a public member is like Tom Hanks' character in the movie Big, where he said, "I don't get it," to get the others in the room to think about a new perspective and other options that might not otherwise be considered. That's not to say I couldn't contribute to the commission, because the other night at the Felton Fire Board of Directors meeting, they discussed how they were just paying a very large PG&E solar true-up. And I let them know that I was in a similar situation and I was able to change my true-up from March to October. So I also wouldn't be stuck with a big true-up, because solar production in the winter isn't great around here. I'll end with, I don't get why the recommended action is picking 2 people today instead of taking the time to talk to each of the applicants. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hensley. Anyone else wish to address the commission? Welcome, Ms. Steinbrenner.
Thank you. My name is Becky Steinbruner. I did apply for both positions. And first of all, I want to recognize and thank Commissioner Roger Anderson and John Hunt for your wonderful service. And I fully expect that they will be appointed back on the board. I understand how things work. But I want to just say that I do think that the commission should interview all applicants. I think that's a fair part of the process. And I've been a member of many CSAs and continue to be so, actively so. CSA 33 for road maintenance, CSA 48, County Fire Department, and CSA 9 by default. So I go to many meetings, Board of Supervisors. I come to most of your meetings when I can, because I find them very educational and I've learned a lot. I think having fresh voices on the board is a good thing. And so I would encourage you as commissioners to allow this whenever it is possible. And again, I recognize that you likely will reappoint the 2 very well experienced, qualified, and good commissioners that are asking to be reappointed. But like the previous applicant said, new voices are always good. And I too am worried about the pressures on this county for development being brought about by the state regional housing number allocations, and the tension that that is creating with the sewer, as we've heard, with the water, and also the fire service. So I have come to understand that LAFCO is a very powerful group. And under Mr. Serrano's leadership, the sphere and service reviews that he has done are incredibly good. But what comes out of those is information that you simply must act upon, as we have seen with the Bransford Fire and Scotts Valley Fire consolidation. I know that the state is very supportive of consolidations. And again, I want to say that consolidation, while it has its place, is not always the answer. So I enjoy working with the public. I have met with my neighbors many times over the 38 years that I've lived in the Aptos Hills to put our heads together like the Big Basin Water customers are trying to put their heads together now. And I would really love to facilitate that in any way, working with the commission. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Steinbrenner. Anyone else here in chambers? Mr. Hurst, make a move.
Thank you very much. I'd give you the traffic report, but you already know what it is today. Lowell Hurst is my name. I do live in Watsonville, 23 Magnolia Court. That's in the Freedom area. And, that used to be an unincorporated area at one time. As you've seen from my resume, I have been a mayor 3 times, 20 years on the city council, but I've also been on some regional boards, the RTC, LAFCO. I was here as a LAFCO representative, both as a voting member and an alternate in really another century. And during that time, we saw a lot of changes in the community and difficult choices that needed to be made. Some of them very controversial. You recall the Franich annexation took 20 years, according to the owner and his attorneys, and how hard and difficult that was. But in the end, housing was produced, parks were produced, prime ag land was preserved in other areas because of the work that was done by LAFCO. I've also served on the Air Board, a public representative of the Federation of Teachers. And so I know how to represent the public. And that's what we really need to do as the public member, is to represent the public and to be able to show up. And I believe that I have the experience and the fresh voice that is also beneficial and called for. So I'm here today to present myself and answer any questions you might have. There's a lot of challenges certainly coming up with, as you've seen, fire, water, sanitation, land use planning is always really tough. And so with my regional experience, I'm not just going to be a voice for South County, but I do have a special spot for disadvantaged, unincorporated areas. And so I'm here to provide solutions, given the opportunity, and to work cooperatively and positively with not only this board, but with the other agencies that appear before you, and certainly represent the public in the most professional way that I might be able to do. So if you have any questions, I'm glad to take them, and I appreciate the opportunity to present myself. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hurst. Thank you for fighting your way through traffic to get here.
Thank you. It was always informative, a time to think and contemplate on the road. Thank you.
Anyone else here in chambers that wishes to address the commission?
I'm Roger Anderson, and I'm basically think the commission has everything they need to make a decision about the public member and alternate. The only thing I wanted to add to what I've already written in my statement of qualifications is that I think that LAFCO needs to take a long view. The forces of growth are going to come, and we have to be prepared and actually deal with them in a constructive way. Now, we're not the only people that are making those kinds of decisions, but as far as I'm concerned, it provides such representation of all of the important groups within the county that it's incumbent on us to make our voices heard as well as possible. So thank you for your consideration.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Anderson.
My name is John Hunt. and I'd like to make a short statement. I've lived in the county for 42 years. Most of that time I've been on the research faculty of the University of California, mostly with UC Davis doing water pollution research. Recently, I've been doing a lot of work on climate change, in particular climate change adaptation. In the past year, I've had a wonderful opportunity and a huge lift to be one of two lead proposal writers for a grant to NOAA for $75 million to fund projects that will provide adaptation capacity to especially the underserved communities along the Monterey Bay, Watsonville, the Beach Flats, Pajaro, Castroville in particular. And in doing that work, well, there are four main parts of that proposal, and one of them is community outreach, another is workforce development, and then the implementation of wetland restoration and riparian restoration to help provide accommodation space for floodwaters so it won't run through cities, and also some wildfire fuel reduction. But in doing that work, I've had a chance to work with community-based organizations who will be doing the community engagement to underserved communities, and to Indigenous organizations that will be doing the tribal outreach. And it's been really impressive that we've worked with the city and county of Santa Cruz, the city of Watsonville, cities in Monterey County, the resource conservation districts, the Pajaro Regional Flood Management Agency, the Land Trust of Santa Cruz County, and I think 15 other major organizations on this. And it's been really a reinforcing for me to see how LAFCO plays a role in interacting and helping all these organizations work together. As we look at housing and transportation and water, good governance is a huge factor in addressing these things positively. And LAFCO plays a central role in making government efficient at delivering services and coming through on its mandate to limit urban sprawl, protect prime farmland, and help all the local agencies work together and efficiently. So it's been an honor serving with you all on the board, and I'd be happy to continue doing so. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Hunt.
Vice Chair, we do have a hand raised on Zoom, so we're going to ask Jane Barr to unmute herself.
Good morning. Due to a previous commitment to babysit my 3 grandchildren in El Segundo, I'm not able to attend in person today. I would be pleased to be selected to represent the community on LAFCO. I believe my analytical and financial skills would be a benefit to the position. My 33 years in affordable housing with the Housing Authority, County of Monterey, Mid-Penn, and Eden Housing, as well as 8 years each on the Pajaro Valley Unified School District and the Santa Cruz County Office of Ed, have given me the skills, background, and different perspective to be an effective governing member, and I would appreciate your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Barr.
And Vice Chair Koenig, I do not see any other hands raised. I will note that staff did review the applications. All 9 applicants are qualified. They do meet the requirements under LAFCO law. Staff did give 3 options for the commission to consider. One is to appoint the regular and alternate members today, or you could defer action and direct staff to do an interview process where we will bring it back to the commission in April, where you can ask formal questions to each candidate. Or the other option is we could reopen the appointment process in the event that the commission feels that we need more candidates. So those are the 3 options for your consideration. Take action today, defer action until April, where you can have a formal interview during a public session for all 9 candidates, or reopen the process. Staff is recommending that you have all the information you need to take action today. So staff is recommending taking action during today's meeting, but it falls under the discretion of the commission.
Thank you, Director Serrano. Before I open it up for discussion, I'll just say I am extremely impressed with the pool of applicants that we have here today. I think the commission really has some excellent choices. It's rare that we see this many qualified applicants for any open commission in the county. And I just want to thank everyone for taking the time to apply and for caring so much about our community. We'll open it now for discussion. Yes, Commissioner Montesino.
Yeah, it's being the new kid in the block, you know. Excellent pool candidates is like, really like to thank everyone. And just for everybody's, it was talking about underserved communities. Watson was one of the most, underserved communities, especially a lot of the effects that have come from LAFCO. And as some members have still on here that have not allowed us to provide some services for the community. What I'm trying to reach is yes, there's state mandates because LAFCO has been in the way because of the lack of housing. Housing in my community is 3 households per unit. Just imagine that. If you go to these places, you see a bunch of cars, bunch of families, where there's, now even, family fights between them because there's too many people in a household. And that's what you don't see in the eyes of this commission, So I'm encouraged with the pool, but I want to offer my, my motion to appoint Lowhurst to the regular board member.
Okay, do we have a motion? Do we have a second? Okay, that motion dies for lack of a second. We'll have further discussion or an alternate motion. Commissioner Cummings?
Yeah, I had a couple questions for staff. So I'm just curious what kind of governs the membership structure of LAFCO. I think to Commissioner Montesino's point, one of the things that I've been thinking about more as it relates to commissions in general, not just LAFCO, is kind of representation, geographic and otherwise, and trying to, increase the diversity of people who are on LAFCO. And so I asked that question because I'm just wondering if there's an opportunity for us to look at how the membership is currently structured, and is there an opportunity to kind of see where we can increase representation. So for example, we have the public membership, and it seems like that's kind of like an at-large countywide kind of thing. Maybe there's an opportunity for us to think about, do we have, 3 public members from North County, 3 from Mid County, 3 from South County. So that way we can try to start, having more representation on LAFCO. And so I'm just curious if maybe you could speak to how the board is actually structured and what opportunities there might be.
It's a great question. So the composition of the LAFCO board, it's been more crafted over the years. So we talked about the city selection committee, how they wanted equal representation on LAFCO. So now they have that rotation. In our policies for the independent special districts, we have different classes. So we make sure that no 2 fire districts are on LAFCO. We have representation for other entities in the county. So we have different classes in place. For the public, the law is clear that there's 2 criteria. One, you have to be a registered voter in that county. So that we've confirmed that all 9 candidates are registered voters within Santa Cruz County. The second requirement is that they cannot be an employee or officer of any of the public agencies, meaning a city, a special district, or the county. The staff has confirmed that these candidates meet the requirements under LAFCO law. That being said, the commission can have that type of discussion of where are these public members residing, what part of the county. That's something that you can definitely consider, but that's not a requirement under LAFCO law or in our current policies. But that doesn't mean that excludes us from having that conversation, because I think that's a valid point.
Right, and I think, and I want to appreciate Commissioner Montesino's support for Mr. Hurst to try to increase that diversity. But I think that just given, the conversations that we've been having kind of more broadly around representation, I think that would be a conversation that we should maybe pursue, just so that we're making sure that we're increasing representation and having more representation of people from throughout the entire county and not just concentrating representation on one specific area. So I'm supportive of, reappointing the current members. And happy to make that motion, but I think that we do need to have that conversation so we can start working on increasing diversity on the board.
Got it.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, so we have a motion by Commissioner Cummings, second by Commissioner Anderson.
Just for clarification, Commissioner Cummings, you mentioned that reappointing the two incumbents for the same position. So Roger for the regular and John Hunt for the alternate. Okay, just for clarification.
Yes.
Comment? Yeah, Tim.
Yeah, just before we vote on the motion, I don't know that I can vote on that motion until we've actually had the discussion. I actually also agree with Mr. Hensley and Ms. Steinbrunner's comment about, actually, I think we deserve to hear more formally from all the applicants. Obviously, Mr. Anderson and Mr. Hunt are supremely qualified, and they are, and I'm sure would continue to be amazing on the board. But I just think in terms of fairness, I really do think that we probably owe a little more time to the selection process.
And I will remind the commission, we do have another month of leeway built in here. We could certainly go back and do, I think the analysis that Commissioner Cummings was talking about would be relatively light lift as far as looking at, how we appoint, what appointments we currently have and what representation that amounts to from the different parts of the county. So that would be an option. Certainly, but any further discussion on the motion that's on the floor? Commissioner Tim?
Just on the comment of diversity in terms of geographical location, I actually think that is pretty important. And I think we should look at the members of not just the public members, but also look at where we might have gaps. Obviously, we have, a city rotation now that is really quite comprehensive, but that may hide areas of the county that don't have representation. So I do think that's important too. I agree.
Mr. Cummings.
I'll just say that, I respect for my fellow commissioners if there's a desire to have more time and, here, because it sounds like we've heard from 6 out of the 9 candidates. If there's a desire to have further interviews, I'm happy to withdraw my motion. But I do think as well that the conversation around, if we're going to restructure the public membership process, it's probably going to take a little bit more time than just what can happen within a month. Is that
your staff, if the commission gives staff direction, we could create a map showing not the exact location of their residency, but we can have a high level map showing their locations, and we can see where they're representing. But I do want to make it clear that LAFCO is a unique agency in the sense that, yes, you are appointed by your peers to be on LAFCO, but you take off your agency hat and you are now a LAFCO commissioner. But that being said, we have 3 board of supervisors that are representing a large portion of the county. We have a fire district in the San Lorenzo Valley area. We have a water district representative from the coastal area. So we do have, and not to mention the cities that are in different locations. I think we do have a good representation of the county as a whole. Can it be better? Absolutely. Can we restructure or look into where the location of the public member candidates are? I think that's a good discussion to have. Staff can create that map and provide it as part of the April agenda packet when we do, if the commission gives direction that we want to postpone action until April, that's something that staff could do. Besides that, it is a quick turnaround. So I want to just be clear on what the commission wants from staff to do, if that's the option that you decide on taking.
Yeah. Commissioner Anderson.
A couple of things. I'm happy to withdraw my second, but I want to point out that Roger is from the North County and he's from La Selva Beach. I'm from the Valley. He's from Watsonville. So we do have the diversity, and part of having been on only bested by the other Mr. Anderson. It's a lot of times, well, most every time we've ever made a selection, it's because of what that person brings to the board. In science or water, and all that, and I've learned much more than I could ever learn in one term over the years. And the historical things, when he talked about Watsonville, the Manabi Owl, when I first got on here, was a big thing. It took us forever. It was a lot of soul searching. It's come up again over the years for different reasons. But one of the tenets of LAFCO is to save agricultural land and not go into development. So we've been hit from all sides with that, but I'm happy to go into a further discussion, but I just wanted to say that.
Yeah, Commissioner Lather.
I would say that Roger Anderson is such a wealth of knowledge and experience, and he actually teaches all of us how, to be good LAFCO commissioners. I would not consider not appointing him to that. And, John is wonderful, and he's brought a lot to the table for us. And it takes more than, well, for one, I wouldn't put a new person in the position. I guess permanent's not the right word, because there is so much to learn before you get to this. And so, yeah, I'm still interested in the original
Motion.
yeah.
Which I believe has not officially been withdrawn, so still the motion on the floor. All right, well, if there's, Commissioner Timms.
I'll go one more. I do think that I would be unlikely to vote nay against the motion, because Mr. Hunt and Mr. Anderson are, as Commissioner Lather said, extremely knowledgeable and have the history. But I do just think we perhaps, if we have the other month, deserve to give the other applicants a chance to be heard.
Would you like, you certainly can make that as a substitute motion if you're interested.
Yeah, so I would make the motion that we just take the extra few weeks. We look at the geographical location of the applicants, but also that we recommend to the applicants that weren't able to be here in person that they should be here in person to actually, take some questions from the commission and be more formal with that. So I would move that is the process we follow and hear from the applicants in April.
Okay. So that's a substitute motion. We'll vote on the substitute. If there's is there a second for the substitute motion?
I'll second that.
Second by Commissioner Montesino. So we will vote on the substitute motion first. If it fails, if it passes, it passes. If it fails, then we'll vote on the initial motion.
Chair.
Yes.
Before we do that, I'll just go ahead and withdraw the original motion, because we want more time. I'm happy to allow to entertain that. I don't think it's going to change my vote initially, but out of respect for the board, if you guys want to have more time to interview other commissioners, so be it. And when we return in April, we can pick this item up again, even though I don't think, as what's been discussed, I think that Roger Anderson and Mr. Hunt are full qualified, but if the board wants to allow a little bit more time, I'm happy to withdraw the motion. So I'll withdraw my motion.
Okay. Well, then we have then the substitute motion is the main motion and only motion on the floor. Yes, Commissioner.
Just one question.
Anderson?
You're going to interview them individually and present the information to us, and then we can ask questions at the next board meeting?
So how it will work, if we have an interview process, so hypothetically, if the commission does approve this, in our staff report, we will have a list of questions that the commission will ask, and you will ask each individual candidate that attends the April 3rd meeting will wait outside. We'll have each one come in. We'll ask a series of questions. The same questions will be asked to all 9 candidates. Then we will bring all of them back in. The commission will have a discussion. All this will be an open session. So the interview process will not be done by staff, but it will be done by the commission. We did bank time for this, if this were to occur. So this will happen in April. And then at that time, staff will recommend that we will need to take action, because at the May meeting, they'll need to be seated. But that would be the process.
Okay. And ultimately is that process up to the discretion of the commission? For example, could we email the questions or mail the questions to all the applicants ahead of time, get their responses, and then maybe ask follow-up questions at the meeting?
That if the commission wants to give direction, the way the staff was anticipating is having like 3 to 5 questions. I will share that information to the commission, get your feedback, but then that will be what's going to be presented to in the staff report. And that staff report will be available for the applicants to look at the Thursday before this meeting, so they can see what questions are going to be asked and they can prep. But if there are certain questions that the commission wants to ask, you can relay it to me and I can filter it. But we want to make sure that the questions are to the point and not too much, because we want to make sure that we have the information from each candidate. But if we want to have specified questions for them, that's where we can ask them.
Okay, thank you.
I like.
Yeah, I was just going to say the same thing. I think that Commissioner Anderson did, which I like that as a process. I do kind of like the suggestive email, but I actually think this one that you suggested, Mr. Serrano, would work very well. And I appreciate that this is staff time and effort. So thank you for, at the very least, indulging my motion and hopefully the commission. But I think it is important. And as Commissioner Cummings said, I don't know that it would change, I think, what is the sentiment, but I think it's important that we hear. So.
Sure. All right. So the motion, if I understand it from Commissioner Timms, is to to come back at the April meeting, interview all the candidates that have applied with a set of questions which will be defined, and also for staff to do some analysis of the general representation that all of the currently seated commissioners provide, and maybe just in general how how representative this body is.
Sure.
And the second, I believe, was by. Oh yeah, that's right.
The now new guy on the block. Thank you,
right.
Commissioner Montesino. I do also believe that it's important that the applicants be here in person for that meeting. Not because I'm anti-Zoom or anything else, but completely not. But part of the job for LAFCO on the commission is showing up in person. You can't vote unless you do that. So I think that's important.
Yeah, and that will be a requirement when we do this interview process. We're going to officially invite them to the April meeting, because I think it is important to have them in person so you can see them.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Serrano.
Any further discussion?
I was just wondering if Mr. Serrano is going to serve lunch and make sure that the county knows we're going to be in this room for at least 4 hours.
Food could be provided if that's if we need it.
One last
Commissioner
question.
Montesino.
I know that the county not up to date of what they're doing in that question about commission representation. So I don't know if there's some wisdom in there in the future for that question that we have.
Okay. Well, if there's no further discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, that motion passes unanimously. And I will now hand it back over to Chair Hunt.
Thank you, Vice Chair Koenig. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Good job.
Thank you, Commissioner Koenig. The next item on the agenda is the City of Capitola Annexation Plan. And I would like to hear a presentation from staff.
Thank you, Chair. Just briefly, this is a continued item from our last meeting. We did receive a request from the City of Capitola for financial assistance. They are planning on hiring an outside consultant to produce an annexation plan to look at their sphere and determine which parcels are possible for annexation and which ones are out of the question. Just one more clarification. And that is directly stemmed from the commission's recommendation in our last service review for the city to look at their sphere and develop an annexation plan. So they took that to heart and they want to have an outside party develop that analysis. They did send us a letter requesting assistance on paying that outside consultant. The commission earlier this morning did adopt a policy limiting how much we could provide assistance in any given fiscal year. The commission right now has around $35,000 in professional services. We've capped any assistance for this fiscal year at 15, again, based on the policy. So staff is recommending that this commission consider providing financial assistance to the city of Capitola to produce this annexation plan. It is up to the commission on how much they want to provide, whether it's a couple thousand or the limit of 15,000. Staff does not have any recommendation on the amount. I think it is warranted for LAFCO to provide some type of assistance just because we are requesting them to do this type of analysis. I will note that we do have a representative from the city of Capitola, Ms. Chloe, I believe she's the clerk of the city of Capitola, and I apologize if that's not your title, but she is attending virtually. So Chair, that concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions when you open and close public comments.
Thank you, Mr. Strono. Are there any comments from the public on this item? Any online?
No, sir.
Okay, hearing none. Any questions or comments from commissioners? Commissioner Anderson?
So how many in a year would we do where the party might ask us for money? Because if we had 32,000, we're going to give half of it to one entity to make it even. If everybody asked for that, how would we disperse that equally?
So good question. So the way we structure the policy, it's by case, but we are limited to 15,000, meaning if we get 10 requests, we have to still be within that 15,000. We don't get that many requests for a fee reduction or a fee waiver, but every now and then we do. And then that's why LAFCO staff has had that language of a case by case. So at this point, this is the only request that we received during this fiscal year. Therefore, we, in essence, have $15,000 earmarked in our current budget.
Okay, thank you.
Just Vice Chair, thanks. I'll just say I'm fully in support of allocating the full or kind of top amount that we could here with $15,000 to the city of Capitola. I think this is actually one of the most important reviews we could do. I will say that first of all, if you look at the western edge of the city of Capitola, it makes no darn sense. We've got like a panhandle that comes over. I mean, right now we're considering a project on 38th Avenue, which is technically in the city of Capitola, but the street outside, I mean, even our public works department, we weren't sure if it was our responsibility or their responsibility because the road literally only crossed as one parcel, but the rest of it was a county road. You know, so I think you have issues like that would be great to resolve. Then, you know, on top of it, many years ago when at first, you know, the city of Santa Cruz and city of Capitola were planning on meeting at 41st Avenue, and then Prop 13 happened, and the city of Santa Cruz decided not to expand so much. But I think that there was a study actually done up at UCSC where their suggestion was there should be a big mid-county system, and that Capitola should actually be a lot larger, merge with SoCal or expand into SoCal. So I think some of those reasons or justifications are still present and at least merit a comprehensive review here. I'll also say that as the supervisor that represents this area, you know, I've got the most unincorporated constituents of any of the supervisors, and ultimately it's a stretch. It means that folks who live in mid-county ultimately have the least local government representation because most of them do not have a city council to turn to. So for all those reasons, I'm very much in favor of supporting the city in this action.
Any other comments, Alan?
Yeah, thank you for all the comments on this. With a caution that I don't know for sure how we might objectively do this. It does seem to me a very subjective process, but I actually do think it's necessary, and I appreciate Executive Officer Serrano's comments around we asked to do this, and Commissioner Koenig actually as to the necessity. So I would move that we approve funding at the 15K and you know get that done.
Second by Commissioner Koenig. Any other comments?
I think it has to go out to public comment still.
I'm sorry.
I think that item still has to go out to public comment.
We already did.
Okay.
Okay, further discussion? Commissioner Jim Anderson?
Mine was quick. There's other ways besides giving them money should other issues arise with another entity where we could reduce the fees that we charge to them other than just giving them budgeted money?
That could be a discretion for the commission of
Yeah.
reducing it, yes, but
Okay.
no.
Commissioner Roger Anderson?
Yeah, I like the whole idea of the plan Ms. Conley presented in the earlier item. And that is that the reimbursements be basically expanded to, result of LAFCO actions. Require someone to do it. See a lot of justification. to go ahead and do it. I share Alan's, concern that it's still a little. I was hoping we would get a more definite proposal about how we would actually make these decisions. I mean, I'm perfectly willing to grant this particular one, but I think the commission will have trouble with this policy at a later time.
Any further discussion? Commissioner Cummings? No? So we have a motion and a second. The table. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstentions?
I'm abstaining.
One abstention, Commissioner Taylor. Okay, thank you. The next item is a legislative update on the new legislative session. And I'll request a staff presentation.
Thank you, Chair. Just briefly, we are in year 2 of the legislative session. There's not that many LAFCO related bills that we're monitoring. There's, I believe, 15 in total that LAFCO is watching, and we provided a summary of those bills as an attachment to your staff report. One item that staff is looking closely is the omnibus bill. That is a bill that does non-substantial changes to the Cortese-Nautz-Hertzberg Act, aka the LAFCO law. We have one proposed amendment to the LAFCO law when it comes to property tax exchange agreements involving special districts. That's something that your staff has been working closely with LAFCO as their omnibus bill liaison. So staff is recommending that the commission adopt a support position for the omnibus bill and direct staff to send a letter to the bill's author expressing our support on that amendment. That draft letter is an attachment to your staff report, and Chair, staff is recommending that the commission take a support position for that bill and direct staff to send that letter if approved by the commission. And that concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Serrano. Are there any comments from the public on this item? Any online?
No, sir.
Anything from commissioners? Okay, we have a staff recommendation. Do I hear a motion?
I'll move recommended action.
Second.
Yes, moved by Commissioner Jim Anderson, second by Commissioner Cummins. Any further discussion? Yes.
Very quick question. I think you also asked Mr. Serrano for the commission's approval on the letter of support. Is that correct? Is that part of the motion?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes unanimously.
We're almost done.
Almost. There. Lunch? Okay, next item is written correspondence. I'll ask staff if we have any correspondence to be shared.
Yeah, we've already touched on, we received 3 late correspondence after we distributed the agenda packet. They were all related to the Big Basin Water. That was a letter from Moonshot, the transition plan involving CSA 7 and Big Basin Water, and the letter of support by the Big Basin resident. So no further discussion is needed, but those were the 3 late correspondence we received.
Okay, any comments from commission or the public? This is not an action item. Okay, moving on then to press articles. Mr. Serrano, is there anything you'd like to share?
No presentation. Again, this is just some articles that we thought would be interesting for the commission to be aware of, but no action is required for this item either.
Any comments from commissioners? Hearing none. I'll ask commissioners if they have any commissioners' business that they would like to share with the commission. Seeing none. Let's move to adjournment. The next meeting is Wednesday, April 3rd, 9 a.m. Do we know where that meeting will be?
It'll be
It will be here. Okay. Thank you all. We are adjourned.
Making sure I'm going to be at the right place.